the more time we spend together, the more you can see each other in our art. And we're actually painting portraits of each other is like one of the big things. So we all pulled names out of a hat and are painting surprise portraits of each other. And that's scary. But
hello and welcome back to this week's episode of the TF Cast.
Hey, Grum here. It is August 8th, 2023 here in the solarium.
And I am your host, Jacob Bases. Today, I am so pleased to introduce our guest artist, Sydney Heid, who's here on behalf of a group show coming to the 410 Project at the end of this month, Fluidity, correct? Mm-hmm. Sydney, if you could just talk a little bit about what the show is going to be like and introduce us to your work.
Okay, so the show is 4 of us, and we're all really good friends. And we picked Fluidity because none of us really have a style that all goes together that would make one cohesive show. So we're like, oh, Fluidity, that kind of gives us a little bit of movement. I personally do a lot of stuff kind of based around nature and like humor. I don't really have serious art. I make way too many cow udders for it to be serious. But Zoe Jensen is one of the artists, and she's mostly painting, but she's also a graphic designer and does some photography. And she does a lot of like feminist empowerment art, and she takes a lot from like the Renaissance, and she did a huge study abroad in Italy, and she talks about it all the time. So there's a lot of Italian in it. Abby Lunebrek is a sculptor and a painter, and she is really just, it's very abstract and it's very fun to look at, and she's got really great colors. I don't understand how she does it, but she does. I'm not as loose as she is. That was bad. And then Hanne Tebben is a painter and a printmaker, and she also does a bunch of really cool, just mostly animal stuff, a lot of people, but we all just kind of have fun with it.
Awesome. Well, I want to get right into the udders, to be honest, because like this is like I don't know if that's what we're about here. Like, well, you do a lot of udders. Yeah,
I did like 5 different udders. They're like big tables, and they're furry on the top because I flocked them, and some of them are like boxes that open.
What you mean? The painting itself is?
Oh no, they're ceramic.
Oh, so like, this is a ceramic udder resting upon a table that is also furry.
No, the udder is the table.
Oh my god. Okay.
It's kind of weird. Yeah. No, I'm mostly ceramic, and then I do printmaking a lot more recently, and then over the summer I've just started painting more. I don't really do a bunch of it, but it's one of those things that you can do in your living room, and my roommates don't like it if I bring home clay. So
yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
So you talked a lot about, or just generally mentioned how like you kind of you said it wasn't very serious, but like what is your influence? Like why do those end up being the things that you want to make?
I just kind of like humor. I think things are a little bit funny, and I think it's funny to have like a massive udder table. Nice. I just did a print, and I did like old sailor tattoos, and my professor was like, oh, like, is it going to be an arm? You're going to see all the hair? And I was like, no, I want the nipples. Like I want it to be a full chest, but I want to put rings on the nipples. So like that was the whole basis of the entire print, was I just wanted nipples to put rings on. So it's kind of just
more
like
about extracting the rest of the artwork from the concept of the nipples.
Yeah.
Like, all right, I need a table with more nipples, and then you're like, okay, it's gonna be an udder table.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where it's like you have like one little tick in the back of your head, and you're like, well, I'm just gonna run with it, and whatever happens.
What do you think it's gonna be like? Putting your artwork as well as the other artists you mentioned together for this show? Like, what do you think that coming together and putting it all in the room is gonna result in?
I think it's gonna be really cool. We have a lot of stuff, and we've been trying to just keep making stuff all summer, so we have a bunch of stuff to fill the space, because we kind of want it a little bit overwhelming, but like not really. But we all hang out with each other so much that we all came from very different art backgrounds. And the more time we spend together, the more you can see each other in our art. And we're actually painting portraits of each other is like one of the big things. So we all pulled names out of a hat and are painting surprise portraits of each other. And that's scary. But that part's really cool because we're all trying to get like the essence of each other in our paintings, but then with our painting style too.
Cool.
You mentioned you've known each other for a really long time too. Have you practiced art together, or is this part of I don't know, you're hang out like a new piece? You kind of adding this more recently?
Kind of. We do hang out with each other a lot. The studio, we are usually there all day, every day with each other, like 2 a.m, kind of all day. But then me and Hanne know each other weirdly from like high school. She was the barista at a coffee shop I went to. And I was always like, damn, she's really hot. And then her and Abby ran like track or basketball or something together, but just for different towns. And then Zoe's kind of an oddball, but we found her and we like her, so we keep her around.
Triple Balls is a media and event production company based in southern Minnesota. We specialize in multicam live streaming and sound and lighting for event productions. Contact us today to learn more, or subscribe online to join our newsletter and stay up to date about events and things going on in the area. Thanks for tuning in. Back to your show.
What has the communication and organization been like? You said that it's all very different like forms of art. How did you determine to come together to make this show like with this group of 4, and what has the collaborative bit of it looked like?
So Dana reached out to Abby. Abby is a recent grad, and then she's going to grad school here. But she's like, oh, you guys should do a show. Like, there's an opening. And then she was like, you can find other people to do it with you, or you can do a solo show. And Abby was like, wow, this is a good opportunity for a lot more people than just me. And so we're all just kind of like the one group that we all hang out with. And so it's kind of like, well, you guys have nothing else going on. Do you want to do this? And we were like, yeah, that sounds great. So there wasn't tons of decision making happening.
Will this be everyone's first show?
No. So Abby and Zoe both had senior shows, but at Mankato, and then me, Abby, and Hanne were a part of a show at 410, but it was like a big community one.
Okay.
And then Hanne had a show at the Gustavus Gallery, and then I've put on one show in the CSU, and it's called Open Access, and we're doing it again this year. But it's through we made a club for art education, and so we fundraise, and so we went to Chicago with the fundraising money that we did last year, but we're doing it again this year. But
Cool.
Well, maybe in that direction, what's your experience with art? So are you part of the program at school right now?
Yeah, so I'm double majoring. I'll get a BS in art education and then a BFA in a concentration in ceramics.
Okay. And so is this project at all tied with your curriculum, or is this kind of an extra project?
This is an extra project. Cool. It opens the first week of school, and so we're really going to be crunching that first week. But I think it's a good way to start off our school year, and it's most of our last years here. So we're really just trying to pound it in, and hopefully we can make a portfolio for grad school or something else along the lines of our future.
Yeah. So what you mentioned too with there's a arts education program. Is that part of your schooling, or is that how did you get involved with that?
That's part of mine. So that's just one of my majors, but I don't really know. It's kind of fun. It's kind of weird.
Interesting.
Yeah, I feel like everything through the arts just kind of like the more you go, the more you end up doing. It's
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, I started strictly like pottery, and it's been a hot minute since I've touched a wheel, because you keep finding things. You're like, well, I guess I'm going to learn how to weld this week.
Yeah.
Like try some stained glass. You have access to so many things. So
how did you determine that you wanted like to pursue a career as an artist or in the arts education in the first place?
So I graduated 2020. So I went to Gustavus my first year, and it was all COVID, and I was a pre-med major. But I spent a lot of time crying on the floor over chemistry homework.
Sure.
And so I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. And then I switched and I came to Mankato and I was like, the only thing right now that really makes me happy or makes sense to me is to go into art. And then that first couple weeks of being in the art program, I was like, well, I should maybe also figure out if where an income could come from if I'm not going to like fully throw myself into art. And so I was like, I'll do art education because I do like to show other people how to do art and I like to learn new things and like museum studies and like going to all of these different places and learning different things is super cool. So I just
that's awesome. We have a lot of the stuff that we end up talking about here is how artists end up making it in their field, you know, like what their, you know, day-to-day finances look like, or like how much time they get to devote to art, or like kind of what the, how do you say, the compromises between their work-life balance and their ability to produce what they want to do.
Yeah, it's really hard trying to find the balance, figure life out.
Yeah. What do you think? So it sounds like you're kind of trying for two paths with the school too. You're trying to learn more about art and your own creative practice, but then you're also looking for maybe a way to be employed in the industry, which seems like a good strategy. But which do you like? What do you think you've enjoyed from pursuing it as like an artist, wanting to develop your own artistic work? I know you mentioned that you spend a lot of time in the studio, and also sometimes that your ideas are all over the place and it's hard to keep with what was your previously.
It is,
but, yeah. Maybe speak to that. Like, what is it like for someone who wants to develop their artist practice?
I think at first it was like really scary because it's like, they always say like starving artists and you know, you never have a job and whatever. But the more you just like dedicate your time to it, so the more you go to art openings and the more you do things like this and you get yourself out there and you meet new people, the easier it seems to be. And it doesn't seem like so far out of reach. And you really just make it your life though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to like balance, to like just keep trying and but also like not putting your energy into things that won't actually end up helping you in like the long term of your career. And like in music, it's like playing shows for free at the same bar forever.
Well, I actually kind of wonder what the what the conversations and mentality and education is towards that, because you mentioned like, oh, like there's always the starving artist or something, but I feel like some of the things have changed here recently over like the last 10 or so years, or maybe even 15, where like a lot of the things that, you know, the artists who grew up as older millennials, Gen X or boomers, they're like, you know, they have very formal like show things. Like what are the kind of opportunities that the people who are like coming out of college as artists talking about, you know, like what's going on the web, or, you know, like how do people even see things like podcasts or, you know, like new forms of artwork popping up that didn't even exist just a little bit ago?
I think social media is a big part of that and the connections there, but also just like keep putting it out there and people keep sharing it, and then just bigger, better things tend to roll around sometimes. Sometimes you miss, sometimes you get a hit, but
Sure.
I guess I see it with art, like musical artists. Like I think I can imagine a couple of examples of people who've like done a good job on the internet and gotten attention and they found some success. I'm not sure if it's exactly what you're asking, Jacob, but I am curious if there's like examples of that within visual art, or like similarly, like a musician might be like think that they could get popular on TikTok and promote. It would be a good platform
that
to
was
promote their music. Good avenue for that.
The heart of the question was, you know, like what are the ideas and opportunities that the people who are just exiting the school system are currently most excited about that might be different from the, you know, ways of doing it that were, you know, previously most thought of to be the norm?
Are you asking like in ways of like, oh, it doesn't have to be a formal gallery situation? And
Yeah, I mean, or just really like anything, like, you know, what is
Like, are
exciting the people
diving
who are
into NFTs or like making pattern prints for shower curtains? I don't know. Anything interesting?
I'm not really sure. Right now, I just kind of make for myself. I'm trying to start making for other people, but it's one of those things that's a little bit hard. I do know Abby was a part of, it's a Twin Rivers thing.
Sure.
Where it's like the best in show. And so there's like little grants and stuff that people are getting that I know a lot more people are getting excited about, because it's the communities are showing that like they're more interested in funding art and like allowing artists to do art things.
We have a lot of good grant programs in Minnesota for aspiring artists. I think especially once, I think you have to be out of school for a lot of those, but for a lot of the like younger artists out of school trying to do stuff in here, a lot of our friends and people who've been on the podcast are representing a grant of some sort. I've gotten one myself, and it's a really great way to like have a project that you kind of see through. And I don't know where I was going with that, except to say that we do have some good resources in the area, and I'm not sure how much of that makes its way to the like students when they are a student, but it's pretty cool that that we have some paths for continuing education like that, because I know like a lot of people might graduate and have a degree, or just even graduate high school and like want to pursue art, but not really have any resources to like make that possible. So some of those grants could like get you a camera or a new set of paints and an easel, or pay for some studio time to record an album or something like that. So being in an area where those things are supported and people find that stuff valuable is really awesome.
Have you had much of a chance to interact with like the Mankato art scene, and could you speak on it at all, what your experience is like?
Honestly, not really. I think Abby would be the one that's probably had the most, because she's done a few things, and she's applying for the sculpture walk downtown.
Oh, cool.
To get into that. So that's something that I'm helping her with.
Does the school like encourage that at all? We talk kind of often about like interacting with like the art community in the college. Is that like something the college is telling people about, like the local art scene and what there is to do?
A little bit. They usually tell us like when there is a show going on, but like we don't hear about every show.
Yeah.
They do try to get us into other galleries. So we did have a show at the Carnegie, and then there's a gallery in New Ulm that we had a show at.
Oh yeah, Charlie's old gallery. I can't remember what that's called.
I think it's the Grand.
The Grand.
Yeah, it is.
Grand, it's called.
So kind of like that, or like they had one at Gustavus, but it kind of depends. It depends who your teacher is or what opportunities that they think are going to work for you.
Yeah, and you kind of already have like a little scene in your friend group already too, so that's got to be empowering. Yeah,
no, Abby honestly has been like a godsend. She is really good at being able to reach out to people and make those connections for us, and so we're all like, thank you, Abby. But we also do need to work on those for ourselves too, which is rough.
Yeah, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about some of the pieces of work that like just like one little thing about from each of the people that like you're excited that for people to see, if you have an idea of what they're going to be showing.
Okay, well, I'm trying to think of which ones. Zoe has these beautiful, beautiful paintings, and she has like a little bit of gore mixed in with like this feminist art. So it's a lot of pink, but then there's also like a cake frosted in like blood, and so like there's stuff like that. And she just at her senior show, she made all of these balls and like kind of pearls that she strung up together, and then there was like blood dripping down them, and she hung them in front of all of her paintings. So it was like this big curtain of pearls that was really, really cool. And it just brought that painting out more into the audience a little bit more. You could interact with it a little bit better. Abby always has something really fun and really bouncy usually. But she is working on these big paintings that she calls mouth breathers. So they're like freeform, made on a piece of canvas, but not on a frame. And they're like really abstract people. And the longer you look at them, the more like you can see in them. And so you can like, if someone points them out, she had to point them out the first time. She was like, okay, that's the head and these are the arms and legs. But once you see that, like you see it, but then you look into it and you're like, oh, that part kind of looks like this and this. But they're these like huge, like 7-foot tall paintings that hang on the wall that are super awesome. And I'm trying to think of what Hanne does, because Hanne does a little bit of everything. She's working a lot right now on tattoos, but I don't really think she's going to be tattooing at the 410. But she does a lot of wood carvings, and she did these really, really cool ones where it's faces and they're just emotions. And it just was really crazy how much you can get, like so much emotion out of a piece of wood, which was really cool to see, because that's something I don't think I could ever do. But yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a great example.
Kind of like my last like creative question for you is, you know, what pieces of like art or media like currently excite or inspire you in your own work? I mean, and it could be anything.
I really like old magazines. It's kind of where I've been living lately. It's like old ones from like the 60s and 70s that I find. Otherwise, I just like being in nature. So a lot of mine is like birds or slugs or something weird like that. But then it's like mixed in somewhere else. But I'm always looking for something. There's just pictures and pictures on my phone of reference images or just like weird textures or that I like. So I look for it everywhere. But
it's cool. What do you think, either for yourself or in the group, if there's a sentiment about like graduating and like going out into the world? Are you guys like looking for a big city to find a gallery to work at, or just planning to stick around here, or what does that kind of look like?
I think we're all kind of planning on moving to a city. I know we've talked about Minneapolis, we've talked about Seattle, but we're like, we could all move together and we can split rent and get bed bugs.
Yeah.
Like bed bugs. Oh my gosh, bunk beds. If we need not bed bugs.
You might get bed bugs in
Yeah,
Seattle.
then you can split
I really
the rent
hope
even
not.
more.
I know. They better be pulling their weight.
Yeah.
No, we're looking for things. I think there is a little bit of that, because there's like a huge turning point for most of us. Like this January, February, we had a lot of crazy stuff going on our first semester that kind of affected our lives in weird ways. So our work has definitely changed a little bit in the last couple of months, and it definitely is like a step up from what we were doing. And so it's kind of also weird that we all went through something that first semester, and then
Like these are like individual personal changes, or like this is like curriculum stuff?
Personal changes mostly. A lot of like big, like there were some family things and some other
sure.
like situations going on that we were like, well, we could just drop out of school right now. And so
it was a tough time to kind of like, but you all saw it through to some extent, and now you're kind of on the other side of that, or
yeah. And I think all of us finally finding time to be together and work together kind of really helped that, because you get that community sense and you get a little bit of the support, which I think is another reason why we're all doing the show together, is because we all were right there during everything. So
yeah, it's awesome to have people to share some of those things with, or work through things with. Your question was from
The kind of the last question that I had like in my back pocket was about like what had been influencing you, but I feel like you answered it fairly. I mean, like you gave the answer that I was looking for precisely.
Is there anything that we haven't covered that we should let people know about the upcoming show? Otherwise, I think we should just direct them to it, and
the only other thing I can think of is Abby was saying something about a lot of our work, because there's a lot of nature, a lot of bodies, and a lot of like Zoe's like feministy stuff. There's a lot of like body positivity and body dysmorphia, and like a lot of that is put into a lot of the works in the show. But that's just about it, I think.
Yeah, and that's like something for people to like both like look forward to, and like if it affects you, be wary of. That's kind of the message.
Yeah, a little bit, and then like just like take a peek at it, and if it makes you feel a certain way, it made you feel a certain way. So hopefully someone feels something.
How do you respond to art like that? Do you often have like an emotional reaction to things, or are you pretty? How do you like to look at things?
I have like 3 steps. I like taking the big picture, and then I look for all the little details in it. I like for the textures, and then I try to think of like what was going on when they were making it, or why they would be making it. And so sometimes it's like, yeah, they like, it's fairly obvious that someone was going through something when they're making it, and so you're just, you just try to take it in and put themselves in, or yourself in their shoes.
Yeah.
And maybe you see it in a new perspective. But I don't know.
Kind of an act of discovery. See what might be there.
Mm-hmm.
I won't say who it was, but I was at the 410 for an opening, and I saw one of my friends just like look at a painting and begin crying. And I was like envious, like I have never been able to like so immediately and like viscerally connect to something that I could just look at. Like, and that would be awesome, because certainly art does, affect me in those ways, but like I've never become so overwhelmed. And I had just looked at the thing too, so I was like, man,
so uncultured.
Yeah, no, I'm always like, did I miss something?
Yeah.
Like, am I just heartless?
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, my girlfriend does abstract realism.
Ooh.
And 100% of the time she's like, what do you see? And then I say something and she's like, that's not what I meant at all. And I'm like,
yeah.
like literally every time.
Wow. Well, is there anything that you would want to share as a message to either like young aspiring artists, something that you've learned along the way, something you've learned in your classes, something you learned as part of this, preparing for this, that you'd want to share to someone about this?
About this, just keep making. Just the more you make, the more you make. And you make a bunch of really crappy stuff, but if you just make so much stuff, like, you're gonna have something good eventually. So
yeah, that's my mantra. Make something really bad, fix one thing, and then make something slightly better.
Better.
Make like 130 just garbage podcasts, but 131.
Yeah,
that one's gonna be the winner.
That's the one.
Yeah. So many people won't ever actually accomplish anything just because they won't like make something bad. Like I used to run an open mic, and so many people were telling me like, oh, I need to get the song perfect before I come play at your open mic. And I'm like, no, don't do that. My open mic is where you try to get the song perfect. Like you're gonna come in 5 years if you try to get that song perfect. So I think what you said is really important.
Yeah, well, and you learn from doing something really bad.
Yeah. Like, completing is like another skill to learn. So if you don't complete things, you like don't learn that part of it.
And I have a big problem with that. I love to start things, hate to finish them. So
Yeah, that's tough.
yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that covers the bases for all we got. Thank you for joining us on the podcast today. And I guess at this time, if you'd like to connect people with where they can find you online, as well as if you have any connections for everyone else that you're going to be showing with. And then let's get that date one more time. Just let them know about the show.
So the show opens September. Oh my God. No, it's August 25th. And the opening like party is 7 to 9. And then it closes the 9th of September. Okay. I am on Instagram as Sydney Heid Art. And then Abby is, let me find it is A Lunebrek _arts. And then Zoe is Zoe Rose Art and Beauty. And then Hanne, I think, is just Hanne art. Oh, that's embarrassing. I can't find her. Hanne. Hanne Artist is Hanne.
Okay.
Hanne. But
Okay.
that's about it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for joining us on the show, and we're excited for the upcoming 410 project. That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. Or me.
Thanks for repping. Yeah.